With each of those passing moments, his blood boiled hotter and hotter until he was positive. "That son of a bitch," he whispered hatefully through clenched teeth. "What?" Rob asked. "That older Jeep down there belongs to my gun dealer friends who were killed a few weeks back. I don't know how Davis found out about them, but he's the one who killed them and stole their inventory." "Are you sure?" Shapiro asked as he held out his big hand in a request for the binoculars. Mark handed them over. "Yes, I'm sure. It's their Jeep. I drove them down to Cotulla to get it. Somehow I knew it was him. When we found that striped 308 brass that came out of an HK-91 at the Watson's place, I knew it was him," he said as he shook his head from side to side. Shapiro handed the binoculars to Rob, and he looked over the compound for a couple of minutes. It looked like the place was empty. The sun was fully over the horizon now, and they had yet to see a person. "What do you think, Mark?" Shapiro asked. "I don't know. Maybe we should go in for a closer look." "Couldn't hurt to get a little closer, I guess." Mark started to push himself off the ground when Rob's hand grabbed his arm. "Mark, wait. Somebody's coming out of one of the cabins." Mark dropped back down. "Where?" he asked. "Second cabin from the right. Here, use these." Rob gave the field glasses back to Mark. He put them up to his eyes. With their aid, he could see that the figure was dressed in camouflage clothing. It was the multicam camo Mr. Davis had bought for his guards. It seemed big on the person they were watching. The figure also looked nervous. It looked from side to side several times before it came completely out of the cabin. Then she, Mark assumed it was a she from the size and the way the figure moved, walked gingerly across the front porch and looked around again. After making sure no one was around, she briskly walked across the compound to the garden. Once there, she hid in the overgrown plants for a moment and rechecked behind her for several minutes. Mark saw her drop down to the ground. The undergrowth around the fence kept him from seeing her for several minutes. When she popped into view again, she was on his side of the fence. One quick glance over her shoulder and she was headed away from the compound at a brisk pace. "What was that about?" Shapiro asked. "Looks like a prison break to me," Rob said. "Did you recognize him, Mark?" "I think it's a her, but I couldn't tell who it is. I'm thinking it could be one of the Watson women. They were missing when we found the men. Mr. Davis may have had them brought back here." "Well, let's go get her. She can probably tell us more about this place in 5 minutes than we could learn from watching it for a week." "Let's go. I'm in front," Mark said, as he picked up his rifle and headed back down the hill. The men moved at a quick jog on an interception angle to the escapee. They had to stop a couple of times to reacquire their hard-to-see target and adjust their bearing. While the woman wasn't moving fast, she was keeping a steady pace. That, combined with the head start, made catching up with her harder than Mark had thought it would be. The three men didn't want to shout at the woman, in case someone else might be in the area. Finally, after what seemed like more than a mile, they were within normal talking distance. The woman had given them no sign she knew they were there. She had stayed on her deliberate course, and the soft ground had allowed the men to approach with little sound. When Mark was about 50 feet away, he spoke to the woman. "Hey, wait up. We want to talk to you." The woman spun around with shock in her eyes. Mark couldn't see the rest of her face. It was covered with a dark-colored bandana. The wide eyes narrowed, and she turned back and sprinted away.